welcome to the Indie Writer Podcast, where we talk about all things writing and indie publishing. Today we are excited to be checking in about holiday fiction with Landis Wade and Stacey Agdern. Landis Wade is a recovering trial lawyer, host of the Charlotte Readers Podcast, where he has conducted more than 250 author interviews, and author of Books and Stories, whose third book, The Christmas Redemption, won the holiday category of the 12th Annual National Indie Excellence Awards, and was the 2018 holiday category honorable mention in the 10th Annual Reader's Favorite Awards. He won the 2016 North Carolina State Bar Short Story Contest for The Deliberation and received awards for his nonfiction pieces, The Cape Fear Debacle and First Dance. His short work has appeared in WritersDigest.com, The Charlotte Observer, Flying South, Fiction on the Web, and in more than 6 anthologies, including by Daniel Boone's Footsteps. His novel Deadly Declarations releases spring 2022. Stacy Agdern is an award-winning former bookseller who has reviewed romance novels in multiple formats and given talks about various aspects of the romance genre. She's a proud romance writer who incorporates Jewish characters and traditions into her stories so that people who grew up like she did can see themselves take center stage on the page. She lives in New York, not far from her favorite hockey team's practice facility. So welcome, Landis and Stacy.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here on the podcast. I love your podcast, and I love talking holiday books, and I'm looking forward to hearing what Stacy has to say, too.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm just going to echo basically what Landis said. Thank you so much for inviting me on the podcast. I'm really, really excited to chat about holiday books, Hanukkah books, Christmas books, all the things, and just chat about writing in general. I'm just really excited.
Well, I'm excited to hear from Becca, too, because she's writing a holiday story right now. So, and I am not a holiday fiction person, so I'm excited to get a little bit more into it. And I got Stacy's book and I got Landis's books, and we're going to jump right in with both feet. So why don't we start with the first question about what do you enjoy about writing holiday fiction, and maybe why were you gravitated to it?
Stacy, why don't you take it off?
Okay. So I think one of the things I think about all the time when I write a holiday story, whether it's a Hanukkah story or a story for another holiday, is the warmth of the holiday in particular and the comfort that it brings. I wrote Miracles and Menorahs after a very, very intense period where I wrote 4 short stories that were based on material I was processing mentally at the time, giving myself for lack of a better explanation for it, political happy ever after that I couldn't find in reality. And when I finished those stories, I needed something comfortable. I needed something soft. I needed something warm. And what ended up, coming out of me, what I ended up going back to was Hanukkah, and ended up writing Miracles and Menorahs as a result of that, which is my first single title book, which came out in 2020. And yeah, that's really what it is about writing holiday stories. It's the warmth of them. It's the comfort. It's the joy that you find within each holiday, whatever you're writing about.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of echoing going on here today because I love Stacy's answer there. The warmth of the holiday season. I kind of got into writing by accident. I was a trial lawyer for 35 years, and I was entering that middle 50s, and I was really trying to figure out what I wanted to do in my life, and it certainly wasn't filling out a timesheet every day. And so I kind of got into it accidentally because my wife always loved the movie Miracle on 34th Street, and it came on at Thanksgiving, and the court season is kind of slow between then and Christmas. And so I started with this. I wonder if I could write maybe just a short story set entirely in the courtroom on Christmas Eve and kind of see what happens. And it kind of took off from there, and it was just a lot of fun. I mean, to think about why you write these, they're happy, they're exciting, whether it's Hanukkah or Christmas or whatever other holiday you're celebrating, there's an excitement to the holiday of not knowing, the expectation, right? And that's what all books are, right? You're trying to find out what's going to happen. But in the end, it's going to have a happy resolution, and it's going to be fun. And I'm so excited to be sharing, the microphone today with Stacy, because we just had a grandson, our first, and our daughter, Jordan, married Julia. Jordan converted to Judaism. So Simon, our grandson, is going to experience Hanukkah and Christmas every year. I mean, what could be better than that, right?
Amazing. Mazel tov. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. And I know a book I'm going to have to get for him now. What's it called? Miracles and Menorahs. Okay, I've got it. So, yeah.
But my favorite interfaith book, I would recommend Jennifer Grayson's Holidays in Manhattan, which is published in 2019, which is a great story about the holidays in New York. The female main character celebrates Christmas. The main male character celebrates Hanukkah. And it's just a beautiful story about both holidays and how they intertwine in New York City, and some of like the really interesting parts of the celebrations for both holidays and how they how they intertwine, and the joy of both of them. So it's just an amazing story.
I love that. Becca, do you want to talk about yours, or is it too secret?
So it's not secret. It's just like at a very beginning stage. I mean, I've written one draft. I'm working on the second draft, but the main idea is that there are two Jewish characters who kind of fall in love and bond over a Christmas album. They both like love this Christmas ska album. So yeah, I also kind of like Stacy. This was not what I usually write or what I started writing. I've just finished. So my first, my debut novel came out in August and is like very serious, kind of heavy. And then I just turned in a nonfiction manuscript that's like about some very heavy issues about the punk scene in North Central West Virginia, and like sexual assault and race and drugs. And so I was listening to romance to give myself a break from the heaviness. And then I decided I wanted to write it. And like holiday romance was like the epitome of that. like what you were saying, it's the happiest. It feels the best. So that's how I kind of fell into it. And I'm really enjoying it so far. But this is my first foray into this kind of writing. So I'm really happy to be here to learn from the two of you.
Yeah, that's cool. And both of you write not just holiday fiction, right? We're not going to put you like in a holiday box and you can only write holiday.
Yeah, I mean, my friend said, Landis, if you write one more book where lawyers save Christmas, you're going to drive me crazy. And it's like, okay, well, I won't, there's no Christmas tree in my next book, and there's no Christmas story, but I'll probably go back someday, because, it's like anything else too. Look, I know Stacy thinks this, there's going to be a Hanukkah every year. There's going to be a Christmas every year. That's a great time to sell your books, right?
This is true.
Also, like, there are so many different stories, or so many different stories to tell within that context, right? Like, because Christmas or Hanukkah doesn't look the same for every single family who celebrates it, or even any other holiday that you're talking about. No one, people follow generally like the things that you're supposed to do on those holidays, but no one actually ever does the same way. No one ever has the same experience. And so there are tons of stories to talk about. Like, Love and Lockers came out in October. It's nothing like Miracles and Menorahs. All they share is a holiday. And I have sitting in the back of my head a possible idea for a fourth book. So we'll see. But like, it isn't the only thing I write about. I've written hockey stories. I've written politics. I've written a little bit of mix of both. It's fun to sort of mine those pieces of life, really, and turn them into stories, whether you're writing fiction or whether you're writing a romance. It's or nonfiction, even like those little bits and pieces of things that tie together turn into fantastic stories.
Well, something I wanted to ask, I don't know either of your paths toward publication, but you say that it's great to market your books around the holidays, but I'm wondering about those who want to query their books. Do you think it's best to try to query agents around the holidays with your holiday work, or do you think like any time of year they're looking for it? Or do you maybe, like I was thinking, maybe they get sick of it around December because everybody's sending it to them?
Or I can say this, I did not query because I fell into it by accident. I didn't really know what I was doing. I was just writing for fun. I wanted to write a story. I'm still practicing law. And it wasn't until the story, it actually was a Christmas gift for my family. You would have thought I gave them socks or something, for Christmas, but once they got over that and they started showing it to other people and they said, well, this, you might do something with this. Then I reached out, found an editor. And because I was, where I was, I didn't really want to go through a long drawn out query process because I wanted to write another one and then another one. So, but I would say probably the season is so busy with so many things that if you're going to query, it's going to take a while anyway. Probably not right at Christmas, is probably not the time to do it.
So when I was querying Miracles, I did it. I got ready for a couple of pitch events, Kiss Pitch, Pitch Mad, and then there was something else. And I think actually Hallmark had opened for submissions, and I think Karina Pitch too. So I wanted the book to be done and ready to go by all of those things, and that's what informed my querying. The process didn't end until everything let's see, first acceptance in March of the book, first editorial acceptance of the book in March. Agent acceptance didn't come until May, which is a whole other story entirely. And then contract was not signed until July. So it was November, December, but you can send them out anytime. Publishing shuts down, I want to say, from the 25th all the way to after January. So right after January or right before everything, see what's going on, see where you want to send your book, and you have to be prepared to send it for those things, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, so maybe we want to talk to an agent. If any of you are out there listening, when do you like to hear about your holiday stories? I'm curious.
I don't think they don't really answer queries in like Stacey said, after the 25th. They just go into hibernation mode.
Well, then maybe that leads me to another question that I wanted to ask you, agents and writers. How do you get yourself into the holiday mindset and the holiday spirit, the times when you're working on your books that are not around that time of year?
Yeah. So for me, as I said, the first one started out in the holiday season. So, that time period when Thanksgiving through Christmas, and that was easy because I was starting to get in the mood. But then, I'm rewriting in the off season. I'm starting my next book in the off season. And really, I would liken it to any kind of plot you're going to develop. I mean, you can close your door and close your shades and put yourself in that space in a heartbeat. And it doesn't matter what time of year it is. And actually you come out of it feeling pretty good. It feels kind of like, the holidays.
You listen to music from the holiday as well. Does that help?
I absolutely did. I have playlists of all sorts. I have playlists for every single one of my books. During the middle to the end of 2020, I developed the habit of walking outside in the backyard. I had walked a track into the backyard when it was, safe enough weather. I live in New York, so needless to say, it's not necessarily always the best thing to do going outside in the middle of winter, but nevertheless, I would listen to my playlists and I would walk myself into the story and I would think about what I was doing. When I was writing Love and Lockets, it was in April, March, April, May or June. It was the summertime. So I was listening, and a little bit later than that. So I was listening to Hanukkah music to try to get myself into the mood of of writing this book. And I also, there were some Love and Lockets is a cooking competition book. So during copy edits, I was able to watch Guy's Grocery Games Hanukkah Delivery Edition. The joy of that was so much fun. It put me right in the mood to edit my Hanukkah cooking competition story. I was like, yes, please, I also, when I was doing proofreads for the book, I was actually visiting very close friends in Virginia who had just gotten a smoker, and part of the book is kosher barbecue. And so of course, I needed to learn a lot about the wood chips and like how everything worked and the temperatures and all the things. So like my friends were very happy, willing, like experimenters and assisters. And my friend Marnie and her husband Pete were fantastic and taught me all the things. And then we ate everything. It was great. So I was able to be accurate. But again, like all of these little things, you know, doing the research for the book is another thing that puts you in the mood. Like, so you've got the playlist, you've got like, you know, scents, you've got, you know, some people use scents, I don't. But like I've got my playlist, I've got my story, I've got like my inspirational sort of videos and things that I could think about. It was just a great and fun experience. And I did that for both Miracle. Well, the edits for Miracles, because the edits for Miracles were off season, but like Love and Lock was entirely off season, which is great.
So I didn't have a playlist, but I felt the playlist in my head when I'm writing. You know, there's some different scenes, and then may be walking down the streets and it starts to snow and you start to hear jingle bells, right? Or something, you know, in the background. And, you know, it's just one of those things that kind of, again, as I say, you sort of immerse yourself, you know, in that time. And for me, since I was writing these sort of, I wouldn't call them legal thrillers, it's sort of legal thriller lights, because they're set in the courtroom and we're putting Christmas on trial, and you got people that believe in Santa and those who don't. And, you know, if they don't win the trial, Christmas won't come for all the little boys and girls and stuff like that. And so I'm watching movies like My Cousin Vinny, because my story is kind of, one of my viewers said my story is kind of a cross between My Cousin Vinny and Miracle on 34th Street. It's that hopeful ending, but it's that humorous path to get there. And I just like the combination of humor and joy. And I think, you know, most writers like to find themselves in that zone, you know? And so that's kind of, it's in my head. I can't have too much music going on around me while I write, but it sort of percolates.
Stacey, I love, so you said something about walking yourself into the story. I really love that imagery.
Especially during like the early periods, like especially for History of Us, which is not a holiday book, it's a summer book. So like, you know, in writing a summer book in April, like thinking about like, you know, the times to come, like what was I listening to? What's on this playlist? You know, walking with my jacket on in like the early March, like trying to get myself into the book, like trying to like think about summer, trying to think about like what this book could be in summertime. And it was, you know, it was so much fun to like put myself sort of mentally in the space of the small town of Long Island that I had created, you know, and be there from my house in you know, where I live in Tarrytown, and, you know, on the other side of the state. So it's important, I think, when you're, you know, when you're writing like these locations, like to try to sort of like, again, like find, as you were saying, Landis, like finding those little things, like whether it's like a snowfall, whether it's a store, whether it's a smell, whatever it is, like to try to find those reasons to get yourself into the story.
I think one of the other questions that we had to, like, because it's that time of the year, you know, people are looking for that at that time of the year. Do you find that like readership and fandom, I suppose, does that drop off? Like, do you see like this huge surge in, you know, readers specifically looking for holiday? I know that I work at the library, and we, like, it's like clockwork. The week before Thanksgiving, everyone's like, we need the holiday books out and all the holiday movies. So we put everything out, and, you know, that's when people want it. And then after Christmas, you know, like after the first week of January, everything goes back into storage. So how do you deal with that surge, I suppose?
So I'll just say that my sister-in-law would watch the Hallmark Channel year-round if she could, you know, because there's all those happy stories on there. I think it's kind of cool that the bookstores locally around here where I live, and then some other people, they bring them back out every year. You know, they might not keep them on the shelf 12 months, but, you know, a lot of times if you have a book, it might go up and it'll stay up for a while, and then they'll stick it in the way back. Well, they'll bring my book back out front again every November and December. So that's kind of good. I like that, you know, and I just work on other things in the off season there.
Miracles and Menorahs has been out a year, and I'm getting now like the excitement of people reading it for the first time because they heard about it at a certain point and they were saving it for Hanukkah. And then, you know, there are 2 other books in the series, including yet another Hanukkah book. So like it's exciting. It's exciting to see like the new readership like a year later. And I'm like, it's kind of amazing that my little, the little book that you wrote like a year before, however long before is like a perennial kind of a favorite. And I think, yeah, exactly. Like, they put the book in the back, but if it's still available a year later, if it's still, accessible a year later, they're going to pull it out again because Hanukkah holiday stories in general, whether it's Christmas or Hanukkah or another holiday that people might be celebrating, whether it's Diwali, they're perennial. Like there's always going to be a holiday season.
And the other thing I'd add, and y'all do a lot of this on your podcast here, where you talk to indie authors about what they do. And I'm learning a lot more now than I knew 6 or 7 years ago when I wrote the first book. And I didn't know anything then, which was, try to write a good book, and then I put it out without any real advance, anything. And now I'm learning about all the things you can do with the online marketing and the online promotions. So we're doing things now like my trilogy is now in a little ebook box set, and it's out this month for like 99 cents. And a whole bunch of more people are downloading it now, which to me is really cool because you're going to get more readers that way. More people find the story. And that's really all it was about for me anyway, is trying to get the stories out and get people to read them. And so having that opportunity every year to try to come up with another clever little way to pitch your book's kind of fun.
No, exactly. Like it's kind of amazing, right? Talking about the indie market, generally speaking, like the hockey series that I do with Isabel Kelly and Kenzie McLear, and then Cassandra Carr was in the first one, is a indie published anthology series about the hockey team called the New York Empires. And they appear in each of my books in like small, in these guys, in conversations and otherwise. And Isabel Kelly was telling me, like, apparently what's been happening is randomly, she'll notice sales of the trilogy, going all in, icing the puck and roughing it over $3. And like, literally it's randomly. And it's because someone has read either Miracles or History or Love and Lockets and saw the references to the Empires and went, oh, wow, it's a team. It's a thing. And then go and buy the whole series, which is great,
Yeah, and that's what I've learned, and I've told other authors. They say, well, how do I sell my first book? And I say, well, write your next book.
Exactly.
And then write your next book after that, and then write your next book after that, and then you'll start selling your first book. You'll sell it like really, really sell it then. Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard that too. Build a strong backlist, and then you'll always have it.
I wanted to talk about crafts a little bit. Could you, maybe for somebody who's new to writing holiday stories, could you tell us like what are the things a reader is going to expect in any holiday story?
So it all depends on what kind of holiday story you're writing. And I'm not just talking about the holiday, because the genre expectations, the subgenre expectations are going to remain the same no matter like what kind of story you're writing. You need to be true to the genre expectations. Once you sort of have decided that and dealt with that, then you go into the holiday. And what holiday are you writing about? And one of the things I think about, the first question you have to ask yourself is this a holiday everybody knows, or is this not a holiday everybody knows? And the answer to that question is going to shape the story on a big level. If it's a holiday like Hanukkah or Christmas, you don't really have to explain the holiday, because the story itself, at least in and Landis, you can jump in on this, but like, you don't have to explain the holiday because it's already known in the story. Like it's already a known and understood quantity. When you start to think about other holidays that people don't necessarily understand so much, like I actually wrote a story for last year's Love All Year anthology, which is an amazing project put together by Elizabeth Kahn and a whole bunch of really cool people that centers really amazing non-Christian holidays. Basically, it's a really cool anthology. And like this year's edition is out. But I had a story in last year's edition about a holiday called Sukkot, which is a harvest holiday, which is a known and understood holiday to certain people, but it is not a known and understood holiday to my general expected readership for the story, which meant in order to write a good Sukkot romance, I not only had to conform to the expectations of the romance, an HEA or an H and FN for this couple at the end of the short, but also explain what Sukkot was, because otherwise the story wouldn't work. So I had to kind of tie in the explanation, and that took up page space. But it was important because otherwise the story wouldn't work. So, okay. So genre expectations, holiday expectations. And as long as you satisfy both of those, like in the course of the story, I think that's really it. Landis, do you have any?
Yeah, no, I think that, there are different types of books that use the holidays. Sometimes they use them as a background. I mean, you can see thousands of romance books out there that use the holidays as kind of a background, but they stick to the romance. I don't want to call it a formula, whatever they expect in that particular genre. But you can actually, I think, as long as you're writing a good story and using the story elements, that is, you've got interesting characters, you've got a good story arc, your characters change. And then the thing about the holidays is, and I saw this in Stacy's title, Miracles. Well, my book is Santa Claus and stuff, but there are miracles involved, right? And, Stacy, she mentioned that, everybody knows what Christmas is, what Hanukkah is. Everybody knows who Santa Claus is, but do they know the backstory? Do they know, what's really going on in your plot? And, kids believe, and we know that adults don't. And my book is about true believers. And a true believer is an adult who believes in Santa Claus, right? And so are there any true believers out there? And really, I think if you can tap into a reader's emotions to where they can think back to when they were younger and experience that joy of that time. And I think that's what holiday books to some extent do. They sort of transport our older selves back in time.
I love that idea that readers of holiday books are more like open and like ready to be open to the miraculous. I think that's pretty cool. Stacy, do you have any advice for people as soon as you started saying like you have to tie in an explanation of what the holiday is, like how to do that subtly without it being just like exposition, like this is the story of whatever, and like how to tie it in more seamlessly with the plot?
So with 3 Stars in the Sky was the story that I did for the Level Year anthology last year. It was tied into kind of every aspect of the story. So like the characters felt the main male character was a musician, the main female character was a songwriter. And the story is that he is trying to basically apologize to her for a whole bunch of things that he did when they were younger. And also like maybe get a song out of her for his new album, which is the song is the very obvious thing, but like what he really wants is to apologize and sort of see if they can pick up where they left off all those years ago. So like, because they wrote a song about Sukkot together when they were kids. And so literally she's talking, like they sing the song. So like you get the words and the understanding of what it is. There's a sukkah that shows up, which is the traditional, which is the hut, which has like the open roof there. And so they're talking about that. Oh my God, is that what I think it is? Like, oh my God, it's a sukkah, like having the characters talk about the elements of the holiday in ways that matter to the story, but are also explanation at the same time, which is the biggest part of it, especially considering like how little page space that story was, like as opposed to Miracles, where like I could go right past 8 days of lights, and candle lighting and go right into applesauce or sour cream. And are we supposed to like, publicly make this huge menorah in the middle of the town square, or like just keep it private and put our menorah in the window, literally? Like what is, that was Miracles. Or like in Love and Latkes, like excellent, we can talk about, we've already explained in Miracles menorahs that like all you need to make a Hanukkah food is frying in oil. But like in Love and Latkes, we take that to level 200, where like we get to talk about all the different cultures in the world and what they do for Hanukkah food. And oh yes, and we'll have latkes and applesauce and sour cream. And do you grate or do you put it in a food processor, and talking about kosher food and all that kind of stuff. And like, but it's all tied into Hanukkah. And like, this idea of like how you celebrate, like sort of going, past like, this is what this holiday is versus like how we celebrate it. The joy of like seeing a menorah in the town square, like what does that mean to someone? Like how hard, how joyous that makes someone feel or not, depending on how you like to celebrate the holiday. There's, or like what aspects of the holiday are important. So.
And I would add to that, as you're thinking about explaining, if that's probably not the right way, but infusing into the narrative, something about the holiday, it's nice to juxtapose the positions of different characters about the holiday and create conflict, because every good novel has conflict, right? And so the conflict in my books have to do with those who believe and those who don't. Well, why don't they believe? And then why do they believe?
Yeah.
And then who's going to be right in the end? And that kind of helps to push the story along. It also adds for some conflict, some humor, and that kind of thing. And that can be in any kind of holiday book. You could have somebody who's, down on the holiday for whatever reason. Maybe something happened in their past on the holiday that makes them not want to celebrate, but someone else in the story, assuming we're headed toward a happy ending, helps bring them along, right? and change that arc.
The arc of Miracles was my main female character, wears menorah earrings. It has Hanukkah, wears Hanukkah like her armor. Has turned it into sort of this fundamental aspect of identity. So clearly she wants this rather large menorah in the middle of the town square as part of the Hanukkah festival, right? She wants to celebrate Hanukkah with every inch of her body in the most public way possible because she thinks it's a holiday of identity. She thinks that it's cultural, that it's important. Whereas for the main male character, who his grandmother loves the idea of this festival and this public celebration of Hanukkah, he doesn't like that idea at first. He's the one who's going to end up having to make this menorah if he decides to. But what he likes about the holiday isn't the publicness, it's the family. It's sitting around the table, eating crispy latkes, spinning dreidels, in front of the fireplace, opening presents every night, having those moments with your family. And they're both valid ways of celebrating Hanukkah, and that conflict sort of sits all the way through Miracles. And how does that work? I don't want to spoil so much, but the idea of where is your family? What is your family? Is it your community? It absolutely can be your community. And standing up and being the light in the darkness with a huge menorah in the middle of town square, saying you are loved, you are welcomed, you are accepted, you are part of the community. That's Miracles. That's the essence of what Miracles was. Because I'd seen all of those stories that you were talking about, Landis, this idea of and I wanted to kind of explore, because when you talk about Christmas, right, you talk about who believes, who doesn't, where is that part? And so I thought about what the fundamental question for Hanukkah was these days, what that sort of knee-deep, sort of, majorly deep question about Hanukkah was. And it's literally this. It's literally that question of, is it public or private? And what does it mean to literally put a menorah in a public place, or put it, when people talk about putting a menorah in your window, which is the commandment, what does that mean? Does that mean literally in your window, or does that mean celebrating it as publicly as possible? Versus Love and Latkes, which does not have that conflict. There's kind of shades of it, sort of acknowledging that not everybody has to wear Hanukkah as armor. Not everybody has to wear Hanukkah as a portion of their identity, but some people do, and it's important. Sarah, who's the heroine of Miracles and Nora, is like that. Batya, who's the heroine of Love and Latkes, is not like that.
So yeah, that's interesting. For me, I wasn't taking on Christmas from a religious standpoint. I wish I could say I had more forethought here, but somebody asked me one time if there was any hidden meaning in my stories, because these characters are dealing with this question of belief, and also belief in things that they can't see, feel, or touch. And so, yeah, possibly if somebody wants to interpret that way, they can. But for me, it was taking the establishment, which is kind of what you see in Miracle on 34th Street and what you see in a lot. The establishment is not going to believe a man who thinks he works for Santa Claus, who's being put on trial for stealing a flash drive that he says holds the key to Christmas, and who's not taking his lawyer's advice not to stick to that story. And so the judge has to be put in the awkward position right before Christmas of deciding, once this courtroom's filled with people, is he going to shut down Christmas in the eyes of all the witnesses, or has something happened in the course of the trial that's going to change his mind? But actually, the most fun I had with it was, I wrote the first book, Criminal Trial. I wrote the second book, The Legally Binding Christmas, which was a condemnation. It was a house on the outskirts of town. It involves Santa distribution system. The county was trying to condemn it, and different character, different client. But there's always this evildoer in the first two. He's a dwarf. We know who he works for, but he denies it. And so the whole time he's trying to scuttle what the lawyers are doing to save Christmas. It doesn't make any sense. It's not until the third book, The Christmas Redemption, that I realized that in a 3-book set, I could have the arc of the evildoer, and I won't give anything away, but you kind of know where it's heading. He's going to help save Christmas in the third book.
So you're saying people kind of ask for the hidden meaning in a religious sense, but when I hear that, and then knowing your background, I'm interested in the symbolism of like the establishment, or like maybe the law world trying to steal steal the miraculous from you, or steal your wonder.
We do that all the time in the legal field. Tamp down enthusiasm, tamp down emotion. We're always a half glass full. And I say that because lawyers are always looking, for those things that can go wrong, right? I mean, it gets to be an unhappy profession. A lot of lawyers really suffer from depression, and we deal with a lot of issues because we're always trying to look for those things that will go bad for our client, to warn them about what they need to do to fix it. But it's not a very great formula for living your life, right? To always be looking for the negative. So I thought, I'm going to step out of that role for a little bit and look for the positive.
I think that says a lot about what readers are looking for in these books too. Like what we were talking about before, people are looking for a way to step out of maybe like the negative mindset that's around us so much of the time.
And Stacy, like in your book particularly, I was immediately struck by, this town board committee who was just like, we need to be more inclusive. Let's not forget about Christmas. And it's like, you start to feel, I don't celebrate Hanukkah, but I can totally understand where you're coming from. I want to learn about Hanukkah. I want to learn about other holidays. Christmas, is whatever, it's Christmas. But so I could just feel the tension from the first page. And, how do you feel when it's just like, it's always about Christmas? How do you kind of deal with that in your everyday life and in your fiction?
So, I mean, you think like, so the heroine of Miracles and Menorahs is a bookseller. She works for the library and she works for the local bookstore. And as a result of all of that, she, as I said, she wears Hanukkah as armor. There is, she loves like random like bits of Hanukkah merchandise. She loves, like, she has a large Hanukkah hat, which appears towards the end of the book in a very fun and pivotal scene that is pretty much a menorah you place on your head. Like she embodies Hanukkah as best she can. Not just because, again, she likes the holiday, but because during this time of year, when sometimes even saying happy holidays is hard, she takes pride in her Jewish identity, and she takes pride in the holiday she celebrates. And I think, like, not gonna lie, like, part of that experience of Sarah's kind of came from my own. I love celebrating Christmas with friends. I love decorating their trees. I love sharing their traditions. But at the same time, I